Welcome to Rochelle's Word. We're continuing in our series on when physical, psychological, and emotional abuse occurs, what am I supposed to do? We are now on part 5 in this series. We have looked at the cycle of violence and the abuser's use of intimidation, the abuser's use of emotional abuse, the abuser's use of isolation, and the abuser's use of minimizing, denying, and blaming. Today, we are going to begin by looking at the abuser's use of children, making you feel guilty about them. A, he says to you, see, if you would have been home, then none of this would have happened to the kids. Or he says in front of the children, Mommy doesn't care about us because if she did, she would spend more time at home with us. B, he uses the children to relay messages. They say to you, Daddy said he saw you out yesterday at 3 o'clock. Or they might say, Daddy said, don't think about telling anybody or you know what will happen to you. And I want to stop there and say to you, my sister, that it's real important that you pay attention to these cues, especially when it comes to children. Because the last thing that you would ever want your kid to feel is responsible should anything ever happen to you. Now let me continue. C, he uses visitation as an opportunity to harass you. Or D, he threatens to take the children away. Now let's go back and look at this 5th category of the wheel. This area has spoken to us about the abuser using the children. To use something means to take advantage of something for personal gain. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5, that love doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own. When we use children, we are self-seeking and we are self-serving. I ask you, does your significant other express the attributes of God when he uses your children? Number 6, using male privilege. A, he treats you like a servant. B, he makes all the big decisions and never consults you. C, he acts like the master of the castle. And D, he alone defines the role of men and women in your relationship. Now let's go back and look at this 6th category of the wheel. This area speaks of the abuser using male privilege. You might ask, well, what is male privilege? Male privilege is when rights and statutes are granted to the population of men in society on the basis of their gender, that the population of women is usually denied. The abuser's rights and his status is determined by his own doing. The Bible says in the book of Philippians chapter 6 that Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. I ask you, my sister, in your relationship with your significant other, why do you allow him to treat you differently and not equally as Jesus thought of himself with his own Father? Number 7, using economic abuse. This is done by A, he prevents you from getting or keeping a job. B, he makes you ask for money. By doing so, this allows him to ask you, what do you need it for? To ask you, why do you need it? And most importantly, he can determine how much money you will get. C, he gives you an allowance and can control what you do with it. D, he takes your money and rationalizes that he gave it to you anyway. So therefore, if he wanted to take it back, he could and he will at any time. E, not letting you know about or have access to family income. Now let's go back and look at this seventh category of the wheel. This area speaks of the abuser using economic abuse. Economic abuse implies that a woman has no say-so when it comes to the manner of finances. And yet, Jesus said in 3 John 2, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou may prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth." I ask you, my sister, if this is God's desire for you, then why do you allow your significant other to treat you otherwise? And number 8, the abuser's use of coercion and threats. They do this by A, making or carrying out threats to do something to hurt you. He might say, "If I see you walk that way again, I'm going to kill you. If I get home again and you don't have things looking the way that I want them to, then there will be consequences for you." B, he threatens to leave you, to commit suicide, or to report you to welfare authorities. C, he makes you drop charges. He threatens you and says, "If you don't drop the charges, I will kidnap the children and I will kill them." D, he makes you do illegal things. He forces you to commit a crime. Now let's go back and look at this 8th category of the wheel. This area speaks of the abuser using coercion and threats. Coercion implies a subtle use of force with consequences, meaning the threat if you don't follow through. The Bible says in the book of Psalms chapter 85 verse 12 that, "Yea, the Lord shall give that which is good, and our land shall yield her increase." I say to you, my sister, God is not a God of coercion, and God is not a God of threats. He doesn't use force in his dealings with us. He wants to give us that which is good. So why then, my sister, do you allow your significant other to not give you that which isn't good, and instead force you to participate in that which is evil? I say to you again, my sister, why is it then that you do allow your significant other to not give you that which is good and instead force you to participate in that which is evil and not pleasing to God? See you next Sunday when we will finish our series on when physical, psychological, and emotional abuse occurs, what am I supposed to do?